So, as a entrepreneur and growing your company, speaking Karen, and all of you guys in the room that really recognize that sales does drive everything in your business. If we had more money coming into our business, would we be able to do more with our business? Why don't all of us have a professional sales training system and coach or mentor if sales is the number one part of our businesses? Right? I know there are many of you in the room that have not gone through legit sales training, but you own a business and it's all about sales. All right? So, Tom here needs no further introduction, but Tom and I met because I hired him. I was doing a couple $1 million in revenue in my business, but I started to recognize that I was good at sales, but I didn't have a system, and I didn't have a system to give to my sales reps, which is more important. And I didn't know how to track the KPIs like Lowell was talking about. So it's kind of weird to say this, but John here, right, used to meet with my sales reps at Uniguest on a weekly basis and give me the KPIs for the company. And I went from our coach, right? And went from $1.5 million to $2 million in revenue to like $5.5 million in 2 or 3 years. And it was a higher margin business because we started implementing a system. So Tom is going to talk about building a successful sales system and strategy for your business. So take it away, Tom. Take it away. Get off the stage, Sean.
My microphone on. Oh, boy. Good. Okay, we need some energy in here, okay? Let's get excited. You know, I got to tell you right now, Lowell scared me. I said, I'm so glad I don't rely on the internet to sell my products because, gosh, did you see that when he put that up? He didn't let me show you that. I go, oh, no, please, Mr. You know. Anyway, so I want to start by telling you a story before we talk about sales today. I want to talk to you about my brother. My brother met with the preacher in our little town every Monday morning, and they recapped the Sunday sermon. And the preacher in our little town would always ride his bike up to the cafe where they'd have their coffee. And one day he didn't have his bike, he walked, and my brother says, where's your bike? And the preacher said, you know, Danny, that was my brother's name. He said, Danny, I got to tell you, I think somebody in the congregation stole my bicycle. And my brother said, well, I'll tell you what to do. You could preach the 10 Commandments next Sunday. And when you get to thou shalt not steal, you let them feel the heat in the seat. You preach hellfire and damnation, and you'll get your bicycle back. So sure enough, the next Monday morning, the preacher rode his bicycle to the cafe. So my brother said, I see you got your bicycle back. Did you preach the 10 Commandments? My brother said, I sure did. The preacher said, I sure did. My brother said, well, it worked then, didn't it? And the preacher said, well, not exactly. You see, when I got to thou shalt not commit adultery, I remembered where I left my bicycle. So if you're like a lot of people that we talk to, some of the things I'm going to cover are going to be things that you will have already heard but have forgotten, like where you left your bicycle. Some of the things I cover with you in the next 45 minutes to an hour will be new. But the idea is that you get something that you can take and put in your jeans to use after this meeting today. So that's what I would challenge you to do. Find one thing, okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit about selling. You see, most people have a stereotypical idea about selling. Like Sean said, how many of you all would like to have less revenue in your company next year? Okay? What is the first thing you fill out when you put out the budget for next year? Revenue. You know what revenue is? It's sales. So why do we have a negative connotation about sales? You know, Daniel Pink, a Princeton professor, did a book called Born to Sell. And in this book, he surveys 15,000 people, and the number one response when he says, what do you think of first when you hear the word salesperson, was used car salesperson, and the number 2 response was pushy. See, most of us have this stereotype of salespeople. We think pushy, high pressure, con man, charlatan, cheat, dishonest, crooked, twist your arm, make you buy, say anything to get the sale, good golfer. Right? You know, but the truth of the matter is, Robert Louis Stevenson said over 100 years ago, we're all in sales. We all sell a product, an idea, or a service. and you cannot name a profession. Take Tim over here who works for my friend at Lattimore, Black, Morgan, and King. Anyway, take Tim over here. He has distinguished himself not by how much accounting he knows, but his ability to communicate. We didn't ask him here to explain the debit line, right? We asked him here because he can communicate what he knows about accounting. And when we asked David to recommend somebody to us, that's the chairman. This is who he recommended, not because of his accounting knowledge, but his ability to communicate. I'll bet a lot of you all go to doctors. I do. I don't know where my doctor graduated in the graduating class. He could have graduated number 1 or he could have graduated last. I don't know what kind of grades, what kind of scores he got on the state exam either. He could have barely passed by 1 point and just be barely licensed as a doctor in Tennessee. Or he could have got a perfect. I don't know. I go to him because he communicates. And if he stopped communicating, I'm going to go to a different doctor. You see, once we have a baseline of knowledge, all of our advancement and all of our success, no matter what profession we choose, is based on our ability to communicate. You want the lawyer who knows the most law or the one who communicates best to the judge, the jury, and the opposing counsel? Do you want the teacher that knows the most history or the one who communicates best to the students? You can go through every profession and you will find out communication is a differentiating factor. So if that's the case, why would you as entrepreneurs and salespeople want to do anything but get better at your communication skills? And so that's what selling is all about. Now, over the last 6 months, Rick, where are you, Rick? Rick's left. Rick is our cameraman and our creative person for Ask a Millionaire. And there's Rick right there. Give him a hand, will you? He's doing all this. So, he probably just had to go to the bathroom. Anyway, so yeah, remember the deal. They don't get any funnier. That's great. So, anyway, what I was going to say is that we've filmed about 100 plus videos. We've also, over my career, the last 8 years of doing this, have accumulated a lot of videos, both in the disc form and, online. And so at the end of this, we're going to offer all of those to you for an unbelievable price. But what I want you to do is ask yourself how you're going to get a selling system in your company if you don't buy something like what we are going to offer to you here today. But it's a lifetime of knowledge about sales, and that's what it is. And a lifetime of successful teaching people how to sell. In my career, I've interviewed thousands of people for sales jobs. I've hired over 1,000 salespeople. How many would you say, John? John's known me since I was 18. 10,000? 15? Easy. And so it's a lifetime of knowledge about selling, okay? But anyway, let's go back to selling for a minute and creating a system in your company. So if you were going to create a selling system in your company, you would want to base it, I believe, on 4 pillars, 4 foundations. The first one is a set of values. You know those values I talked to you about this morning? When I started private business, that was my first business, I sat down with every new hire that we had, and I looked them in the eye and I said, these are the things we're building our business on. Happiness is a way of traveling. Control your attitude and stay up here as much as you can. Think big. Be persistent. Get better every day. Right? And so the point was that we based all of our employees on that value system. We told our employees that our company was a boat and that we're all out in the middle of the ocean together. And you know what happens if there's a hole in the boat? We don't say, that's accounting's hole. Good luck. We don't say, that's sales hole. Good luck. We don't say, that's operations hole. Good luck. What do we say? How can I help? Right? Because our hope of living is based on plugging the hole in the middle of the ocean. And so this foundation of principles tries to do that. It tries to unite everybody in a common philosophy, a common feeling about the boat. Now, some of you are sole entrepreneurs, and so you've got the boat all to yourself. So I'm telling you to embrace those values, yourself, until you can build a business large enough that you have to hire other people. The second foundation of building a sales system in your company is based on the number of people you see. You see, there's something called the law of averages, and it is a law. We all believe in it intuitively, although we don't always act on it. Is there anybody in here who hadn't bought insurance in their life? Yeah. See, the way insurance works is you put all your money in the table, you put your money in, we all put our money in, and then if one of us have an accident, a health issue, we die, car wreck, we get to take out and pay for that. And the rest of us lose our money, right? But we're willing to do that because the law of averages might touch us, right? Yeah, the law of averages is a law. You know, there's no casino in the world that ever went out of business because of gambling losses. Can you believe that? You see it on TV, but it never has happened in the history of the world. Do you know why? The law of averages works. Now, there have been casinos that go out of business because they didn't get enough people in there to gamble, right? But they never went out of business because of gambling losses. It just doesn't happen. It's the law of averages. So I'm going to ask you one more question. If I gave you a choice between two TV screens, two internet sites. On this internet site, we get 1 million views a day, qualified prospects. On this internet site, we get 100,000 qualified prospects looking at our product and services a day. 1 million a day qualified prospects, same product. 100,000 a day qualified prospects. Which one? And the price is the same to advertise on both. Which one do we pick? I'll give you a clue, right? The questions get harder. This is where we go. Why? Why would we do that? The law of averages, right? It's okay to smile. So anyway, the law of averages is your friend. So you have to build your company on that second foundation, and that is the law of averages. If I had a health club, I'd want to talk to as many people as I could, and I'd really try to pick the ones that were kind of like me, you know? Anyway, if I had a company that I was trying to sell products to for hair care, I would call on as many as I could. I wouldn't try to limit myself in any way. So the law of averages is important. And then you have to do what Lowell said. You have to track that, keep track of it, right? You have to set goals around activity because activity leads to results. And so in our world, we're calling B2B. So we tell our salesperson, you've got to see 3 new businesses a week. If you see 3 new businesses a week and tell them your story to somebody who's a part of the decision-making process in the organization, you will sell 1 customer a month. And if you sell 1 customer a month, you'll make X amount of money for the year. It's pretty simple. And I love the metrics up here because that's the way a sales organization should be developed. And didn't you love his story of the person who said, oh, I'm going to get you 10, I'm going to get you 10. You know, you've all hired, if you've ever hired a salesperson who said, oh, I'm going to do better than that, and then they just fell flat on their face, because money talks and BS walks, right? You all have heard it. And so the point I'm trying to make is that this law of averages is a foundation, it's a principle. It's something you have to build your sales organization on. And you need to know the metrics of your business when you hire somebody. So if I was going to hire somebody, if I was going to hire Jonathan here, I'd say, Jonathan, if you come to work with me, I expect you to see 3 new businesses a week. If you see 3 new businesses a week, one of those will develop into a demonstration of our product. Of the 3 that develop into a demonstration for our product or 4, 1 will buy. If 1 buys, you're going to earn X amount of money a month, and by the end of the year, you will have earned this. Does everybody understand that? Most of you all hire salespeople like this. Well, we got this product. We want you to sell it. What do you think? Right? It's wrong. So, that's the second one, the number of people you see. And as I said this morning, see more and sell more follow each other everywhere. They're 2 brothers. They never depart from each other's company. See more and sell more. Okay? The third, don't go to sleep on me. I'm making everybody do a lap around the building after this. Okay. The third foundation that you have to build your business on is the quality of your presentation, the quality of the presentation of your product. Now, I met with Miguel over there next door a minute ago, and he says, I write scripts, but my people won't use them, right? It's a management issue, but it doesn't mean that the system is wrong. It just means that the system isn't being managed to. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, now you're working on your presentation. Now, Harvard did a study of sales talks in America. When do you think the first sales talk they found written by an American business for a product or service was written? 1863, before the Civil War. 1863, American business started writing out what they were going to say before they said it, right? And there's nobody in here who would argue with me about a commercial. Should we do a commercial for Jonathan's company and get a professional actor or actress, do the scripts, film it several times until we get it exactly right? Or should we let old Jonathan here just stand up and talk off the top of his head about what he likes about his business? We're going to pay the same for the ad. Which one are we going to invest our money in? Sure. Duh. Okay? So when you go see somebody, or you send somebody to you send somebody that represents your company to sell your product or service, which commercial are you sending? You hope you're sending the good one, but if you don't have a foundation of scripts, presentations, of proposals, you are sending Jonathan ad-libbing, right? So you have to plan out exactly what you're going to say. So the Harvard people, when they did the study of sales scripts, they noticed something else, that in the scripts they followed an outline, and the outline was the same every time. Isn't that amazing? The outline was the same every time for hundreds of businesses that wrote scripts for how to sell. It's unbelievable, really. But here was the first thing that everybody did. They said, establish rapport. Does anybody understand establish rapport? It's a French word, rapport. And it means establishing a link emotionally with the person you're talking to. Establish rapport, okay? So, how do you establish rapport? Well, one way you do it is you use their name. You see, Dave, when I use your name, a lot of things happen. One, I hit the most important word in your life. You know, they tested thousands of people over and over again. Which word brought more pleasure? You know, they got something on their brain. They're looking at the pleasure center in the brain, and they're measuring which word brings the most pleasure, the most reaction. And you know what word brings the most pleasure reaction for everybody? Their name. It is the same pleasure zone that is stimulated during sex. Now, I told one group that, and I had a young woman up here at the front, and she said, Tom, 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 Tom. I didn't know what to say. The only thing I could think of was, can you go slower? Anyway, so Tom, you use their name. You use their name, okay? The second thing that happens when you use their names is you break down social barriers. Do you call your family by their name, or do you go, hey, you, or just start talking to them, right? What we do is we use their name, right? And so this breaks down social barriers, and what are we trying to do? Establish rapport, so that's a good thing. And then the third thing is when I use your name, Andrea, I hold her attention for 7 seconds. Yeah. Because, and that's a long time, because we are taught at a very young age to listen when somebody uses our name, right? Okay? So, establishing rapport. Second thing that I want to talk to you about establishing rapport is that you ask questions to look for a common bond. Now, I told you already this morning I use the same 3 questions every time when I establish rapport. If I met any of you, I ask you the same 3 questions. Where are you from? How long you been here? Where were you at before that? And in those answers, I look for something that I can hook on to, like Edmond, Oklahoma. Yeah, I cut wheat down there when I was a boy. Oh, you did? Yeah, I got a lot of business in Hutchinson. You know, now we're friends, right? Okay. If I don't find anything to establish rapport with, you know, so we're talking about Creve Hall, right? Well, I used to have a house, a condo. That was the first house I had in Nashville. It was over close to Creve Hall. We talked about that, and now we're friends again. So I'm looking for a common bond with whoever I meet to establish rapport. Now, I'll tell you something else about establishing rapport in a sales situation. 80, I believe it's 80. But the studies say 60 to 80. So let's go with the low number, 60. 60% of communication is nonverbal. That means it's body language, right? It means it's facial expressions. So Harvard, they do a lot of studies on everything, but communication is important to them. They understand the importance of that. So they do a study, and they ask 1,500 women to look at a video with no noise. And they say, what's this conversation about? All the women can do is look at the body language, right? 68% of them knew what the conversation was about. They asked the men to do it, and I'm sorry to say it was only about 28% of the guys. But I'm serious. 60 to 80% of communication is body language. So if that's the case, when you're establishing rapport, you want to have body language. Here's the best body language tip I can give you. When you ask a question, Heather, and anybody answers it, I want you to go like this while they're answering it. Because body language studies tell us that when you nod your head when someone is talking, you get 66% more information. And I forget who it was, Jason maybe up here on stage, said that he wanted to hear as much as possible from the prospect. Well, so do I. And a good way to do that and a good way to establish rapport is to nod your head. Now, when the prospect is talking, something happens. It's called psychological reciprocity. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before or not, but it means this. If I listen to you, Heather, you'll listen to me. It's a social contract, and it occurs all over, both in business and social situations in America. Women are really good at it. They'll come into my office and they'll say, Tom, do you have a vacation planned this year? They could care less about my vacation. But they know if I tell them about mine, they're going to get to tell me about theirs. That's called psychological reciprocity. We get very good at it, you know? And so this is all part of establishing rapport. And the better rapport you have, it doesn't make the sale. Oh, they're not going to buy because they like you. They're not going to buy because they like you. Why do you want to establish rapport? So that they will listen to you. I don't know who said that, but it's absolutely true. So they will listen to you. That's what you want. You know, believe it or not, when you go in to sell somebody on a new idea, most of them don't listen to you, right? They just don't listen to you. They don't. They're just performing a function. And so your job in communication, because you're going to be an A-level communicator, is to get them to listen to you with an open mind. And that's the most you can hope for. Now, the second thing Harvard found that came into the sales talk and the scripts was that they had a section where the salesperson found or created a need. Like I said this morning, you'd be a hack if you didn't. You'd be a quack, right? You've got to find or create a need. And the way you find or create a need is by asking questions. They're called need-based questions. So if I'm selling dog collars, I say, Mr. Jackson, do you have a dog? Yes, I do. Do you have a lot of collars for the dog? Yes, I do. About how often do you buy a new collar? Oh, about every 5 years. Oh, those must be really great dog collars. You know, most people get one every 1 or 2 years, but I understand that. And what do? Do you usually get a leather or a canvas one? Oh, I see. Do you see what I mean? I'm finding or creating a need before I present my product. And that's what the study said all the sales talks did. Now, the next thing they said that came in the sales talk was the product, a demonstration of the product, idea, or service, right? So that would be dog collars. So, Jonathan, I want to show you our selection of dog collars. We got red ones, we got black ones, we got green ones. Which color do you like the best? That's called an interest-based question, right? Interest-based question. So IBM in the 50s developed this. They said when we present our product, we want you to do 3 things. We want you to present the feature. We want you to point out the benefit, and we want you to ask the question. Now, I'm not sure there's any benefit in one color over another in dog collars, but I am going to present the features, and then I'm going to ask the question, which one do you like the best? So the benefit then becomes what? The color he prefers, right? Duh. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this is how you create a sales presentation, right? Now you've presented the product. You're allowed to present 3 or 4 features. We have a wonderful training program. One of the features is we have flexibility on time. Another one, and the benefit of that is you get to maximize your time during the day, and your time's important, isn't it? Okay? Do you see that? The second feature is that we have some of the most modern equipment available. That benefit is it maximizes your effort so that you get better results, and results are important when you have a limited amount of time to work out, right? Yes. Does everybody see that? Now, I'm just doing this off my top of my head, but I've done it a few times, right? For about 300 companies. And so the point is when you get yours, you do the same thing. Or you hire a coach, you know, to help you with it. And it doesn't have to be me. So anyway, then the next part of the sales talk is called the closing process, right? That means you're going to bring them to a point of decision, okay? So how do you bring them to a point of decision? You ask, right? You ask for the order. And so there's a two-step process. The first step is called, and this is right out of the study, the trial close. The trial close for every product I've ever sold, every sales talk I ever wrote, every company I ever worked with was the same. How's it sound so far? How's it sound so far? How's it sound so far? And so they're either going to tell me it sounds great and give me permission to bring them to a real decision, or they're going to say, well, I've got these questions, or I don't know, or I've got an objection, or blah, 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 right? Okay. So now what we do is that we ask, how's it sound so far? So Heather says, yes, it sounds really good. Now she's given me permission to bring her to a point of decision, right? I've been talking to her for an hour. She likes me. We established rapport. I know she needs the product. I presented it to her and showed her how it fit her needs, and she said, yeah, that sounds good. Okay? So now I get to close. So a lot of salespeople have closing reluctance, but I just want you to know, you need to go ahead and ask for the order, even if it's done sloppily. It can be done very beautifully. But even if it's done sloppily, you've got to ask for the order, okay? Now, what do I mean by sloppily? Here was it, do you want it or not? That's sloppy, okay? Another way, a better way is to use closing techniques which make it easier for people to make a decision. By the way, you could be as good as me. You could be a better salesperson than me, and you are not going to trick one person into buying your product. I have never successfully felt like I walked out of an office with an order and they didn't know what they bought. You see, when you walked in there as a salesperson or an entrepreneur, they knew you weren't there to save the dolphins. Yeah, they knew you came to sell them something, right? And so if that's the case, let's just try to communicate and make it as easy for them to buy as possible. So how do we make it easy for them to buy? Here's one way. Heather, now there are two ways you can pay for this. You can pay for it all up front, or you can pay for it quarterly. Which one works the best for you? Okay, now I need to get some information from you in order to set that up. How simple is that, right? Or here's one. You know, Jonathan, there's two ways we can do this. We could start this immediately, like the 1st of June, or we could wait and start it July 1st. Which one works the best for you? So I'm selling books door to door, and this was my close. 18, right? Mrs. Jackson, what everybody likes about the way they get their books is I'm just taking orders today. I'll be delivering the books at the end of the summer. I'll bring them back so you can make sure they're exactly like I told you they'd be. You'd want to do that, I guess. Yeah? Now, I'll send you a postcard 2 weeks ahead telling you the day I bring them. If I send you a postcard 2 weeks ahead, could somebody be home in the morning or the afternoon of that day? Yeah. Now, Miss Jackson, how do you get your mail here? And then we had a big laugh because she always said, we get it in the mailbox. John and I, John sold books too, just so you'll know. And we must have heard that 12 or 13,000 times. We get it in the mailbox. And you know something? We laughed every time, like it was the first time we ever heard it. We did. Okay? And so, anyway, then we say, seriously, Mrs. Jackson, what's your address? We get her address, and when we say, if you'll okay that there, we'll bring your books back at the end of the summer. And we never said, do you want them or not, right? We made it easy to buy, and that's what a close is, and that's what the studies of the sales talk said the outline for the presentation was. The selling process is simple. There's a transference of feeling. The first definition I was ever given of selling is a transference of feeling about a product, an idea, or a service. Nobody's more excited than you are. Zig said, for every customer you lose because you're too enthusiastic, you will lose 100 because you were not enthusiastic enough. Now, the second thing is find or create a need. Once you find or create a need, you've made the sale, right? And third is you've got to bring them to a point of decision. You men here that dated when you were younger, can you imagine having a great time with a young lady, walking her up to the door and saying, I'll be back tomorrow for my kiss? That's stupid. And not bringing people to a point of decision is just as stupid. So I'm going to tell you a story to illustrate my point about the selling process and the quality of the presentation. There was an accountant at a toothbrush factory, His name was Charlie. He had a speech impediment. I'm not going to make fun of anybody with a speech impediment, but I have to illustrate what he had to overcome in order to become a great salesperson. He goes to the sales manager. He says, I'd like a job in sales. Sales manager said, Charlie, you're a really good accountant. We need you over there. Please stay over there. You've got a speech impediment. Sales is communication. I don't think you're going to be successful there. You probably fail. Charlie said, "Just give me a chance, just give me a chance." The sales manager gave him a chance. Into the first week, Charlie had broken all the records for the rookies. Sales manager said, "You got a job, Charlie, but tell me, how did you do it?" Charlie said, "It's easy. I just go to the busiest corner in town where people walking this way, this way, this way, this way, back and forth. And I put up a sign and a booth that says free brownie. People love brownie. And when they come by, I say, one if we brownie, one if we brownie, one if we brownie, everybody take one. And then they bite in the brownie, they go, ooh, that brownie tastes like crap. I say, it is crap. Want to buy a toothbrush? I got him. He's laughing. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that Charlie did what I just described to you. He had a transference of feeling. He was enthusiastic. He found or created a need. In this case, he created a need, and then he brought him to a point of decision. Want to buy a toothbrush, right? And so this is the point I'm trying to make with all of you, is that you've got to create that as the third leg of your stool for your product. And then the fourth leg of the stool for your product is the quality of the prospect. So one of the difficult things we have to do in business-to-business sales is get in front of a decision maker. The decision maker, if you get them on the phone, will very easily push you down to somebody who has nothing to do with the decision and may even be a weak influencer. And once you become one off from the decision-making process, you have lost control of the sale and the sales cycle. And you know, we discuss all these in the videos that we're going to offer to you. And I can't believe Sean talked me into this. But anyway, so, but that's why I'm hesitating. But anyway, I'm thinking, do I have to do this? So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, the quality of the prospect is everything in selling. Who will sell the most? The guy that talks to the decision maker all the time, or the person that talks to the influencer all the time? Depending on the quality of the presentation, the person who sees the decision maker has the better chance, right? If I gave each of you a chance to see an influencer in a company or a decision maker in a company, I hope you would be smart enough to pick the right hand again for the third time, which is the decision maker. So the quality of the prospect is dependent upon that first, that they can make a decision. Secondly, that they have the money to buy your product. If they don't have the money to buy your product, why are you seeing them, right? Now, people will lie to you and say they can't afford it, but then there are those who really can't afford it in the business world, okay? And if you have a company, you ought to just, and you've got prospects out there that you want to target, then you ought to just find out quickly by getting a credit score or a Dun & Bradstreet or some kind of reporting service that tells you and eliminates bad credits. And then the third thing that determines the quality of the prospect is your relationship to the prospect. We take referrals. I would much rather have a referral than I would call on somebody that I have no relationship to or no connection to. If I were selling candy, tell me if I'm wrong, I would go to my family first as opposed to strangers. Right, I'm right. And so you should too in whatever you're selling. And so part of the selling process is to learn how to get referred leads. There was a question over here and I said, read the book, No More Cold Calling. This was a best-selling book. You know why? Nobody wants to cold call. If there's a trick to it, I'll buy that for $15, right, or $20, or I'll pay $50 for that. The truth is we all have to make cold calls. We have to all call on people we don't know at some point in the expansion of our businesses. I promise you, you will not be able to get away from it. However, the less we do of that, the better our closing percentage will be, the better use of our time we make, and the more we sell. So we've got to figure out how to get referrals. And there are lots of ways, and we discuss them on the videos, there are lots of ways to get referrals, you know. And the better you get at getting referrals and the better you get at learning how to link in to people, the better you will do. And somebody asked me the other day, said, I'm having trouble getting a hold of people, and I'm just new in my business, and, you know, I like to sit on my thumb sometimes. But anyway, the point is that you've got to go to work on that. You know, you can't, you know, everybody starts in the same place. And there are no excuses accepted today. And there are so many tools out there to find the decision makers and get to the decision makers that it's crazy. It's crazy. Yes, they don't answer the phone like they used to 30 years ago. But can you find out everything about them before you get there? that you couldn't 30 years ago? Yes. And I'll take that second over the advantage of the first, okay? So the quality of the prospect is important. Now, if I were going to try to help you to build a sales system in your company, I would say, let's get a value system that we all believe in and support, and then I want you to share that with every salesperson and employee that you hire in your company. And then I'd say, okay, we want to see a lot of people, so here's the way we will see a lot of people. We'll get a prospect list, and we'll manage that prospect list. This is to Miguel's question earlier. So if a salesperson doesn't have a prospect list, he's unemployed or she's unemployed. They just don't have a job. There's no job without a prospect list. And so we would get a prospect list. And then as the CEO of the company, if I didn't have a sales manager, I would manage that prospect list with my salesperson, and I would do it on a weekly basis. And I would sit down with him and I'd say, Jonathan, how many people did you see this week? Well, I saw 2. Okay, let's talk about why we didn't get 3. And I would coach him through what he was doing wrong and not to get to 3. Because I don't care if he sold anything or not the first week. I don't. But if he didn't see 3 people, I know he's not going to be successful. If you don't know the metrics in your business, then figure them out so that you can share them with your salesperson and then manage to that number. So there was this wrestler, his name was Dan Gable. Does anybody know who Dan Gable is besides John? Because he's heard the story before. Good, Dave does. He was a wrestler, he's from Iowa. So anyway, Dan Gable was a high school wrestler in Iowa. He was undefeated. He never lost a match in high school. He goes into college, he's wrestling for Iowa State University. He doesn't lose a match in college until the last match, and a very controversial thing. If Dan Gable was here right now, he'd stand up and say, I won that match. But anyway, then he goes into Olympic wrestling, and he loses to the Russian. He gets a silver medal. And they asked Dan Gable what he's going to do, and he says, well, I'm going to come back in 4 years and win the gold medal. So he goes back and he does win the gold medal. All my stories have happy endings. Have you noticed that today? Okay, so anyway, he comes back and he wins the gold medal. And they asked him how he did it. He said it was easy. I got the Russian's training schedule. The Russian was working out 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. I worked out 8 hours a day, 8 days a week. 7 days a week. No, 6. I worked out 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. You see, he focused on activity, and guess what? Out popped the gold medal, the results. And by the way, that's the way Dan Gable coached his wrestling team at the University of Iowa, which won 17 national champions, more than any other major college sport or coach in the history of the NCAA. That's who Dan Gable was. He focused on activity, and he got results. And that's what you have to do too as an entrepreneur, manager / sales manager of your team or of yourself if you're a single person, okay? So we're going to see more people by having a prospect list. Now, if your salespeople, if Jonathan says he didn't see 3 people this week, I'm going to say, did you do call blocking, right? What is call blocking? Call blocking means you block out a time each week on your calendar that you call new prospects. I worked with a radio station here in town in 2008. Guess what was happening in 2008? They weren't spending money on advertising, small businesses. And so we said we can increase sales. And this was a Cumulus station. No other Cumulus station in the U.S. increased their sales. We did. We increased by over 20%. We increased activity by 33%, though. And this is how we did it. We had them come in from every salesperson, 21 or 22 salespeople, came in every morning from 9 to 10. They didn't get to do anything else. They sat in their cube, and they called new prospects for new appointments. They didn't do anything else but do that. That's called call blocking. You block a specific amount of time to see new prospects. And I'll debate on the courthouse steps with anybody that there is nothing more important you can do in a sales job or as an entrepreneur than see new businesses. Even if you've got a successful business generating millions of dollars in profit, you've got to see new business because businesses go out of business. Businesses change because of the competitor and because they get bought, right? It's called attrition. And the average attrition for a business in America is 15%. So if you know you're going to lose 15% if you're average, you better see some new people, right? Okay. So anyway, the point is that we would manage that time blocking, right? And based on that and having great scripts that helped us get appointments, we would move forward down the road, okay? Now, I want to tell you, and then I'm going to be done. We got to get back on schedule here. What we tried to do was cram 3 days of material into 1 day. Really, we did. And, you know, we're so excited about everything. I loved everything that I've heard so far today. And now, here as we wind down, we've promised to get you out of here by midnight. So anyway, you know, when I went to work for Bill King, he said to me this. He said, Tom, we got a great job here. You only have to work half a day. He said, we don't care which 12 hours.